I talk a lot about China on this channel because I think they do things a little bit different, and we got to look at why is their crime so low and ours just astronomical. Like I can't even walk outside and people are going to attack. Number one, it's internet surveillance. If some people are talking about, the incel movement, your body, my choice, which basically means they believe that they can unalive women at their own free will, and grape or whatever, that's type of stuff. If that was going on in China, the government would shut it down. So that's part of it, because the culture, they do monitor the culture and make sure the culture itself doesn't turn violent. But the other thing that happens is that the people who run their cities and towns are incentivized to make things better. So in other words, when they do better, when their city does better. So like if you have a mayor of a town, think about the mayor of a town. If um if the town does poorly, the mayor doesn't get paid more. But if the people get mad at the mayor may not get reelected. They'll be very unpopular in the press. So the mayor is in America incentivized to please the people, not to make the city better. They're incentivized to make people like them. And if you've ever been a parent of a child, the parent who is concerned about making the child like them is going to very much hurt the child and not do what is best for the child. But in China, the government, the officials are given, their rewards are based on how good their city is doing. So can you imagine if the mayor of Chicago was rewarded financially by how well Chicago was doing on financial measures, on crime measures, and on overall livability, other things, and growth, financial growth of Chicago, of their crime rates, of their homicide rate. If the mayor of Chicago was paid bonuses based on how well Chicago was doing by these metrics set by the federal government, everything would change. Everything would change. Everything would. Because right now, the mayors and the governors of states, they're all incentivized by the popularity contest. But if you had them incentivized by KPI, by key performance indicators, everything would change. Crime would be reduced because they would then be doing whatever it takes to get the crime rates down, not really worried about whether or not they're popular, right? Because we're all selfishly motivated at some point, and we should have a good spiritual practice so we don't take advantage of others in our selfish pursuit. But that is why capitalism tends to work, and China's a capitalist country, just by the way. That is why capitalism tends to work the best, because it's based on selfish principles that if you work harder, you'll get more, right? If you don't do as much, you will get less. And that's kind of the way the human nature has evolved over what they now believe. They used to believe that humans were about 200,000 years, of humans on Earth. Then they thought it was 300,000. Now they recently found fossils that are about 1,000,000. But anyway, we've evolved for a long time to be incentivized by working harder, right? If we hunted harder, we would get more food. If we, did harder foraging, if we worked harder at foraging, we would get more food. And that is how we have evolved to be motivated by what is rewarding. And so we're not really these, we'll work as hard as we, we'll work at our optimum, regardless of what we get paid. Even if we think that we do, we don't. Because if you work really, really hard and you know that you're going to get 10 bananas, but then if you work really, really hard, but you know that you're going to get 10 bananas and, a sack of potatoes and some protein, right? But you have to work a little bit harder to get the extra stuff. You're going to work a little bit harder to get the extra stuff, right? You're just going to put more into it. And that's just human nature. And that's why capitalism works. And so we are kind of selfishly motivated, whether it's selfishness because we want popularity, or selfishness because we want people to like us, or selfishness because we want more money, selfishness because we want more power. We just kind of do things based on that. And like I said, we should always have a spiritual practice to kind of tame that so that we don't do this in a harmful way to others. But understanding human nature is important when we set up our government structure. And so if we did learn from China, we don't have to worship China, we don't have to become China, but we can ask, why do they have a better system in some ways? I'm not saying everything. I'm saying, what are they doing that works? What could we learn from? And one of those could be that the federal government will give incentives to, extra incentives to the wage of the governor that reduces their crime, extra incentives to the wage of the governor that shows certain KPI growth metrics in their economy of their city, and so on. If they did that, I guarantee you it would improve. If they gave bonuses to the mayor of Chicago, or whatever you want to call them, if they gave a financial bonus in the wage to that mayor, for reducing their crime by 10%, I guarantee you the crime of Chicago would go down by at least 10%. If they said you need to get this, and if you get a bigger bonus if you decrease the crime by 20%, I guarantee you the crime rate would go down, because that's the way humans are motivated. Just a thought about why do they have such phenomenal growth? Why do they do such really thoughtful things in the way that they grow their cities? And they do have really good designed cities, designed to make it great for living, because the people that are designing those cities and trying to get more growth, more economic growth in their area, are doing that for own financial incentives. And that's genius. If you ask me, that's genius. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I hope you have a great day, and like and subscribe. Thanks.